Imani Rhodes sat at the long, polished conference table, the buzz of murmurs fading as the meeting began. Around her, the suits were sharp, their eyes sharper. The room felt cold despite the late summer sun filtering through the windows. Harrison. Dale, the company's senior executive, cleared his throat, a slow smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. Not the friendly kind. Imani. This is a serious discussion, Harrison said, his voice smooth but edged with condescension. Your pilot project has been interesting, but we need results that align with our vision. He tapped a folder in front of him. Your approach is, frankly, too unconventional for this board. The words hit like a blow. A few heads nodded politely, but Imani's pulse quickened. She was no stranger to being the outsider, the overlooked, the underestimated. Still, hearing it out loud always stung. She kept her eyes steady. Unconventional ideas have shaped every major breakthrough, Harrison, she replied evenly. If we want to reach communities left behind, we cannot rely on the old playbook. A ripple of discomfort swept the room. Harrison's smile faltered. You're passionate, sure, but passion doesn't replace experience. Sometimes it's better to stick with what works. The subtext was clear. Imani's credentials weren't enough. Her background wasn't polished enough for their world. Her voice, loud, direct, and rooted in real struggle, was an inconvenience to their polished narrative. Her mind flashed to the nights spent poring over legal texts after long shifts, the constant balancing act between survival and ambition. She knew she belonged here, even if they refused to see it. A colleague interrupted, steering the conversation back to numbers and graphs. Yet, the damage was done. Imani felt the weight of doubt settle in the room like a fog, thick and suffocating. Outside the window, a group of young people gathered in the city park, their faces bright with hope and questions she wished she could answer. They were the reason she fought this invisible battle. When the meeting adjourned, Harrison approached her with a patronizing pat on the shoulder. Keep trying, Imani. Maybe one day you'll get it right. The sting of dismissal was personal, but beneath it was something else, a fire, a quiet determination that refused to be dimmed. Walking out, her phone buzzed. A message from Malik Jordan, her closest ally and trusted friend. They don't see you now, but they will. Keep pushing. Imani paused, breathing in the humid air. The path ahead was anything but clear, but she wasn't turning back. The question lingered. How long would it take before they realized what she already knew? That justice, access, and truth were long overdue in the world she aimed to change. The night was quiet, except for the soft hum of the city and the occasional honk of a passing car. Imani sat on the worn couch in her small apartment, the glow of her laptop screen casting sharp shadows across her face. Malik Jordan leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching her with a mix of concern and respect. You've been at it for hours again, Malik said, breaking the silence. How do you do it? Work all day, then come home and study law like you're in school. Imani smiled tiredly, but didn't look up. Because no one else is going to fight this fight for me, or for people like me. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. Her mind drifted back to those early days in Birmingham, the crowded house where she grew up with her mother and little brother, Isaiah. Their world was small but loud, filled with stories and struggles that no classroom could teach. Her mother worked 2 jobs, balancing exhaustion with fierce love. You have to be twice as good, she used to say, because the world will try to see you twice as less. At night, when the house finally fell silent, Imani would pull out a battered set of legal textbooks she had borrowed from the local library. The words were dense, the concepts complex, but something inside her thrived on the challenge. Working late shifts at the diner had been her reality, serving tables by day, studying law by night, all while keeping the bills paid and food on the table. Every contract she read, every clause she unraveled, fueled her resolve. Yet, when she stepped into the sleek offices of her law firm, That determination met walls. Meetings where her name was left off the agenda. Emails that went unanswered. Ideas dismissed before they were heard. Malik sighed, moving to sit beside her. It's not just about the work, is it? It's the way they make you feel. Like you're not part of the team. Imani nodded. It's like fighting a shadow. The system is designed so people like me never get to the table. Even when we do, the rules are different. Her voice cracked slightly. Sometimes, I wonder if all this is worth it. Malik's gaze was steady. It is. Because you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for everyone who's been ignored, underestimated, shut out. Flashbacks filled her mind, being locked out of a crucial merger meeting, the look on her supervisor's face when she pointed out a legal risk no one else had seen. Instead of thanks, she received sideways glances and whispered doubts. She remembered the nights she sat alone, rereading contracts that confused even seasoned lawyers, determined to find the loopholes that preyed on the vulnerable. Each setback carved away at her confidence, but never extinguished the spark. It grew fiercer, burning brighter. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a photo from Isaiah, a snapshot of a protest in downtown Birmingham. Young faces holding signs that read, "No, your rights," and "Justice for all." Imani's jaw tightened. This was the world she wanted to change. A world where knowledge was power, and power was shared, not hoarded. Malik stood, pulling her gently from her thoughts. Tomorrow's another day. They haven't seen the last of you. She looked up, meeting his steady eyes. For the first time in a while, she believed it. The conference room buzzed with muted conversation, but Imani's eyes were locked on the thick stack of papers in front of her. The merger contract spread across the table looked like any other. Dense paragraphs, legal jargon, and footnotes. But something tugged at her instincts. Her finger traced the lines slowly, searching for anything others might have missed. Hours earlier, she had barely been allowed into the room. The key decision-makers barely glanced her way. Still, she pushed herself to pay attention, to find the cracks in the facade. Then, it caught her. A single word buried deep in the clause, describing the company's obligations. Temporary. The word pulsed with meaning, the weight of its implications sinking in. Temporary could mean limited liability, short-term obligations, but it could also open the door for the other party to walk away without penalty. Imani's heart raced. If this went unnoticed, it could cost the company millions, or even collapse the entire deal. She stood abruptly, voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "Excuse me, I believe there is a critical risk here." Heads turned, some with surprise, others with barely concealed irritation. Pointing to the clause, she explained, "This temporary label restricts long-term accountability and could be exploited to avoid key responsibilities." A hush fell over the room. Malik, sitting near the back, caught her eye and nodded encouragingly.
He had noticed her dedication long before anyone else did. Harrison Dale, the senior executive who had dismissed her before, frowned. "Are you suggesting this deal is flawed based on one word?" "Yes," Imani replied firmly. "And that word?"
"Could jeopardize the entire merger." The board exchanged uneasy glances. What they had seen as a routine legal document suddenly became a minefield. Later, Malik pulled Imani aside. "You saw what no one else did. That's not luck, it's skill." For the first time, his tone carried genuine admiration. "This changes everything. You're not just another voice, you're someone they need to listen to." Imani felt the shift ripple through the office. Doors that had been closed started to crack open. Invitations to meetings replaced cold shoulders. Still, the weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. The eyes of the company were now watching, expecting results. At home that evening, she recounted the day to Isaiah, who listened wide-eyed. "You really changed the game," he said. Imani smiled, but kept her gaze steady. This is just the beginning. Malik's support grew too. He championed her ideas, countered the skeptics, and helped to navigate the political undercurrents of the firm. The once isolated lawyer was becoming an indispensable part of the team. But with newfound recognition came new challenges. The powerful stakeholders who had once dismissed her quietly began to watch her more closely, ready to pounce on any misstep. Imani knew the path ahead would demand more than just legal knowledge. It required resilience, strategy, and courage. As the weeks unfolded, the word temporary became a symbol, not just of a contract clause, but of Imani's own temporary invisibility in a world she was determined to change permanently. The boardroom atmosphere was thick with unspoken challenges. Imani sat at the long table, surrounded by powerful investors and executives, their faces a mix of skepticism and thinly veiled disdain. The success of the merger should have been enough to silence doubt. Instead, it only sharpened the scrutiny. Questions about her credentials began to surface with subtle precision. One investor leaned forward, voice calm but loaded. "Ms. Rhodes, your practical skills are evident, but can we be certain your academic background matches the demands of this role?" Another board member exchanged a glance and added, "Experience counts, but pedigree matters in our circles. Are you truly prepared to represent this company at the highest level?" Imani's jaw tightened. The subtext was clear. She was being measured against an invisible standard she never had the chance to meet. Her years of self-study, late nights with contracts and relentless determination suddenly seemed invisible compared to Ivy League degrees and prestigious law firm resumes. She had expected resistance, but this was something different. It was a wall built not from facts, but from prejudice. As murmurs grew louder, Malik caught her eye across the room, a silent encouragement to stand firm. The weight of history bore down on her. Generations of barriers, whispered doubts, and systematic exclusion. The moment to respond came swiftly. Imani leaned forward, voice calm but unwavering. "The concern I hear is not about my competence, but about where I come from. You fear me because I did not come from your world, and yet I outperform many who did." A hush swept through the room. Some faces flushed with discomfort. Others masked it behind tight smiles. Her words cut through the polite veneer and struck at the heart of their unspoken fears. The lead investor cleared his throat. "That is a bold accusation." Imani met his gaze steadily. "It is a truth we cannot afford to ignore if we want this company to grow and innovate." The tension escalated as board members debated, some defending her, others doubling down on doubts. The line between professional critique and personal bias blurred. Outside the room, whispers swirled in the corridors. Rumors about Imani's unsuitable background threatened to undermine her every move. Yet amid the storm, a core of allies emerged. Malik's open support and a few forward-thinking executives began to challenge the status quo. Imani knew the battle was no longer just about a contract or a merger. It was about breaking through a culture that resisted change. The pressure tested her resolve. Long nights brought moments of doubt, but also fierce determination. She reminded herself why she had started this journey, to create a space where talent and truth mattered more than pedigree. In board meetings and private conversations, she sharpened her arguments, refusing to be sidelined by invisible biases. Her voice grew stronger with each challenge, a beacon for others who had been overlooked. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure meant more than losing a contract. It meant reinforcing the walls that kept countless talented people out. Imani's courage turned that rising conflict into fuel. She was no longer just fighting for her place. She was fighting for the right to belong. A heavy quiet filled the auditorium as the lights dimmed, leaving only a spotlight on the stage. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on Imani Rhodes as she prepared to introduce Lawbridge to the world, the legal education app born from countless struggles and unwavering determination. Imani stepped forward, a script laid out before her, but she barely glanced at it. The words printed there felt hollow, a sanitized version of a fight that had cost her sleepless nights, tears, and endless battles against a system that refused to listen. She took a deep breath, scanning the crowd. Faces blurred together. Students, activists, lawyers, and everyday people who had come seeking hope. No matter how polished the speech, no matter how rehearsed, she knew the truth demanded more than corporate platitudes. Imani's voice cut through the silence, steady but charged with passion. Justice is not a luxury. It is a right. Her words landed with weight, rippling through the room. She paused, letting the statement hang, then continued. For too long, legal knowledge has been guarded like a secret password, kept behind locked doors, complicated language, and endless forms that confuse and intimidate. The crowd shifted, leaning in. Some nodded knowingly. Others exchanged glances, sensing the deeper meaning behind her words. This app, she said, is a beacon, a flashlight in the dark for those who have been ignored, dismissed, or silenced. It empowers people with the tools to understand their rights, to ask questions, to challenge injustice. Her eyes locked on a group of teenagers near the front, their faces filled with a mix of skepticism and hope. You do not have to be a lawyer to stand up for yourself. You do not have to feel powerless. The murmurs grew louder, swelling into applause. Imani allowed herself a small smile but kept her focus. This is not the end of the journey. It is the start. The system is designed to keep many of us out, but tonight we push back. She spoke of the countless hours she had spent reading contracts behind a diner counter, of watching her own community lose battles because nobody explained what the fine print meant. The personal was political, and her story was woven into the app itself. Her voice softened, carrying the weight of those who had come before her, those still trapped in silence. Every time someone uses Lawbridge, they reclaim a piece of power stolen from them. By the time she finished, a hush had settled again, this time filled with reverence. Then the applause broke out, rolling like thunder through the room. The crowd stood, many rising to their feet. Cheers and whistles filled the space. Some wiped tears from their eyes, others hugged strangers. Backstage, Malik Jordan awaited, his usual reserved demeanor cracked by a proud grin. You didn't just launch an app, you launched a movement. Imani nodded, her heart pounding not from victory, but from the understanding of what lay ahead. Because the moment on stage was only a milestone, the real work was waiting in the trenches. There would be resistance. Skeptics would question the app's impact. Powerful interests threatened by transparency would push back. Still, Lawbridge was now out there, in the hands of those who needed it most. As she left the auditorium, the cold night air was thick with possibility. Darius, waiting nearby, handed her a bottle of water with a tired smile. You changed everything tonight. She took it, feeling the weight of years, of battles lost and small victories won, settling like armor around her shoulders. Imani glanced back at the glowing building one last time. The standing ovation was behind her, but ahead lay countless stories of struggle and hope waiting to be written. Lawbridge was more than technology. It was a lifeline, and she would fight to make sure it reached every corner of the country, every person who deserved a chance. Word spread fast once Lawbridge launched, from the bustling libraries of Atlanta to quiet community centers in small towns across Alabama. The app was changing lives. Stories poured in, of people finally understanding eviction notices, wage theft claims, and confusing legal jargon that had once trapped them in silence. Imani watched the numbers climb. 27 states now had active users, each download representing a voice newly empowered. But for her, the real success was not in the statistics. It was in the messages she received late at night, when a single mom thanked her for explaining a rent contract that had threatened to ruin her family, Or the teenager who said Lawbridge helped him know his rights when questioned by police. Her story, too, found a new stage: the internet. Clips from her speech circulated, shared by activists, legal advocates and everyday users inspired by her fight. Viral headlines crowned her as a new face in legal tech, not just a developer or entrepreneur, but a champion for justice. Yet, Imani did not let the spotlight change her. She knew that traditional qualifications had not opened these doors for her. Instead, it was the sum of her lived experiences, the late night studying, the battles fought behind closed office doors, the setbacks endured in a system stacked against her. Her journey challenged what it meant to be qualified. Degrees are important, she said in one interview, but understanding lived reality, that is what truly prepares us to make change. Lawbridge became more than an app. It became a symbol of possibility. Schools began adopting it as a teaching tool. Juvenile centers invited Imani to speak directly to youth grappling with the justice system. Articles and podcasts featured her, insights on how technology could break down barriers, but only when created with empathy. Behind the scenes, she worked tirelessly, listening to user feedback, making updates, and expanding outreach. The Second Glance Foundation, her nonprofit, awarded grants to youth in underserved communities, fostering new voices and leaders in legal literacy. Imani's relationship with Malik and Darius grew stronger, their belief in her fueling the mission forward. Malik often reminded her, "You didn't just build software, you built a bridge, from confusion to clarity, from silence to power." Despite the growing recognition, Imani remained grounded. The same determination that had driven her in those early years stayed with her. She was not interested in fame or accolades, but in tangible change. One evening, as she sat scrolling through the flood of messages from users, she paused on a text from her old high school coach, a simple note: "You always had the fire, keep burning." Imani smiled softly. The road had been long, filled with unexpected challenges and moments of doubt. But she had never lost that spark. Lawbridge was proof that sometimes the fiercest qualifications come from the stories we carry, the struggles we survive, and the courage we find to rewrite the rules. And for Imani Rhodes, this was only the beginning. Malik slid his phone across the table, the screen glowing with numbers and graphs. "Look at this," he said, voice low but proud. "Imani, you're trending everywhere. Social feeds, news sites, even late-night shows." Imani glanced at the stats but shrugged lightly. "Trending doesn't mean much to me," she replied, her tone steady. "It's not about being in the spotlight." Malik smiled knowingly. "Exactly. It's about what you've built, the lives you've touched. That's the real impact." They sat together in the quiet office, a soft hum of city life drifting through the window. For a moment, there was no need for words, just the weight of everything they had achieved. Later that evening, Imani's phone buzzed with notifications. One after another, messages arrived from people whose paths she had crossed. Friends, supporters, strangers changed by Lawbridge. Among them, a text from her high school coach stood out. It read simply, "You always had the fire, Imani. Keep burning bright." Her fingers paused above the screen, a faint smile tugging at her lips. The memories came rushing back, late practices, tough lessons, that relentless belief in her potential when the world often did not. Scrolling through the messages, she felt something rare, a quiet confidence that was not loud or boastful, but deep and steady. The fire inside her had never dimmed. Imani put the phone down, eyes lifted toward the city lights flickering outside. This was not the end of her story. Far from it. The journey ahead would be just as demanding, just as uncertain. But now she was ready. With purpose grounded in both struggle and triumph, she faced what came next. Not as a symbol, not as a trend, but as a force committed to justice and change. The future awaited, and Imani Rhodes was ready to meet it head-on.